thank you very much for coming. I'm very honored to be here. It's with great pride that I stand at this podium. Is the mic on? No, I mean for them.
I don't know if you need to put it.
Yeah, it's on. I was terrified in the back there for the last 20 minutes talking because I was afraid I was being recorded and I was trashing everybody that I'd met. Now, I want to just say up front that this is like a family get-together. Hey, Larry. So I'm very loose and open, and it's not a formal, structured thing. So that helps me relax and it allows me to be more myself. I'm very uncomfortable in kind of a formal setting. But I will say with great pride how much it means to me to be standing here with this Meadows Museum podium in front of me. I've spoken in bars and honky-tonks and art leagues and some of the places I've been. I can't mention where I've given talks about my art. But I have my friend I bring with me everywhere I go, my little friend the bull. That's not true, actually. I was just given this in an office. It's what you squeeze to release tension. And I need a whole bull, not just this. Because I'm very nervous. You come somewhere like this, it's extremely difficult. I've been privileged to give a lot of talks about my art over the years. And I'm amazed that at this stage of the game I'm still asked to go do these things. But it's very difficult to speak, with an audience where many of the people know you because you can't lie. So if I was speaking in Detroit right now, I would start with early in my career when I was in France with Picasso and Miro having lunch, and Picasso said to Miro about me, you know, this young man has got a future in this. Those of you who know me know that I don't know how to spell Picasso, much less having ever met Picasso. But what I'm going to do today, I'm going to be very clear. I hope that you understand that when I talk about what I'm going to talk about, that I'm not advocating that this is the only approach, the only way to make art. It's not the only. I know that there's great art that's being done today with digital. I know there's great art today that's being made with lasers. I know there's great art today that's being made with nothing. So you go in and there's nothing there, but that's great art. But I'm going to talk about art that I care about. I've been asked to come here, and I'm not advocating this for other artists. I'm talking about me and the way I look at the world through my art and through my drawings, because I assume that's why you came to hear my thoughts on this. And I start my thoughts on this by talking about the most important thing to me, which is drawing. And I will begin this by, let me think, where do I want to begin? All right, let's turn the lights out. And I'm terrified that I'm going to have sparks and smoke coming out everywhere when I start punching the wrong buttons. Okay, let's start in the beginning. I believe, no, I didn't do that. It was done just before I was born. Let's start in the beginning. This is my thoughts about the long lineage and the long history of drawing. And the earliest known marks made by humans, among them are these cave paintings in Lascaux, but far predating these, and I don't have photographs, are the caves and rock art paintings in Australia, which I had the great privilege of seeing about 10 years ago with the great critic Robert Hughes and I were on a trip to Australia, and we went out in this remote land and looked at these great cave paintings. And these were approximately 17,000 years ago. Those paintings go back 30,000 years, maybe longer. And they're very similar to this, but they're there's much more figurative work in them, and less in animals too, but very figurative. And in these drawings, they're very rudimentary but beautiful renderings of pregnant women and fish and fowl and spears and I'm not a historian or an expert, but I was told by those who really know this stuff that there's a sense of a spiritual to them. There's a sense of caring, that there's something that these drawings somehow connect the tribe, the people, with a higher plane, and there's a feeling that it's important to the tribe because of the fertility symbolism and the need to feed the tribe with the symbols of food and et cetera, and hunting. And then that sense of understanding of trying to create a spiritual sense for the greater good, and that's the key here, the greater good, instead of the individual. And throughout the earliest stages of art history, we have no idea who made so much of the art. It wasn't about the ego and me. It was about something bigger. And that's key to what I want to talk about today. And then next, first slide, and it screws up. I knew it because I hit the wrong button. Oh, there. Let's flash forward to my neighborhood in New York City today. And the idea that you couldn't get more far removed from the betterment of the society and the good of the masses and the people that art can help and serve in some spiritual way. This is all about notice me. So some crude, like ZALB or whatever that is, it's all about the individual and notice me. And what we've evolved to from these earliest drawings on the caves and in the spiritual context in which they were made by what was believed, they think, to be holy men at the time, we've evolved to art, not just this art on the walls of my neighborhood, but art in museums and, well, not so much in, well, some, yes, Whitney, but in the galleries of today with so much of the art, not all of it now, I'm not talking in absolutes, I'm talking in generalities, but so much of the art today is about notice me. And it's not about the extension of the appreciation of the long history of art and how that can benefit society. It's about notice me because I want to be noticed and I want to get ahead. And in my selfish way, I'm going to use shock and awe, to quote one of our presidents, to get attention to myself. And that's far removed from the idea of art in some spiritual context in which art can serve a higher level and good. So I'm going to talk about drawing now in particular, and in my work in particular, about how I think that the essence of understanding art through drawing and understanding art in a different sense of the idea that the self and me, but in the idea that art can be beneficial to a larger segment of our society, is very, very important, and we're rapidly losing that. And so that's my message in the last few months of me going and giving these talks, is how there are too many buttons here for some of this much ADD. All right, so that's my wall, and we have that in the book. It's just a collection of drawings that my assistant Ashley, who does all the work and I get all the credit for it, put on the wall of just boxes of things in my studio, from sketchbooks and things I do and things I work on all the time, just little doodles and things where ideas come from. And this is just a various assemblage of art from several different periods, drawings from several different periods where my ideas come from. So in each of these, there's something that I'm trying to say with them, a message, not to draw attention to myself, but hopefully in my work there's a message for a larger audience. Some, thank you, Dallas Morning News today seem to have got it. Sometimes they don't. I can be seen as the new incarnation of Albrecht Dürer, and a New Orleans blog on one of my last shows down there referred to me as, "Who the hell does he think he is?" So it runs the gamut. So, but I'm trying to convey something with my work that has something to say in a narrative way that is of importance to not just my own ego, but maybe to a larger segment of society. So I'm going to start with just about 4 photographs of just drawings at random. And then I'll get in. I just want you to hopefully think that I can draw. So this is to prove to you that I have some skill level. That's a big drawing that's here in the show in the room downstairs around the corner. How many of you here, if you don't mind, have seen my show? Oh, never mind. Well, I was going to encourage you to go, but thank you for doing that. All right. That's a charcoal drawing and some ink and tea. And anyway, it's just oysters. I ate every one of those oysters. This is just a drawing of lily pads of a pond. It's on my property in Amagansett, Long Island, that much of my art comes from. This is just, there's a lobster in the show downstairs, but this is a different version of that same lobster. It's just these are, things like this are things I do to make myself a better draftsman and to try to understand the complexity of seeing, and I'll get into all this later, but all right, now this is the beginning of my lecture about drawing. I think that drawing, if you go back to those earliest cave paintings and you move forward in time, there's been this uninterrupted ribbon or train or river of history throughout the great wall paintings and drawings of ancient Egypt, through the Byzantine, through the Renaissance, up and up and up, that throughout that history, there's an ability to create and to organize structure, to create beautiful sculpture, beautiful frescoes, beautiful paintings and sculpture in Egypt, beautiful mosaics in the Byzantine, and on up through the Renaissance, where the great Renaissance masters used drawing as cartoons to paint the paintings, like Leonardo and Raphael and whoever. And then on up through the Baroque and the all the way up through Manet and Monet and Impressionism. And each period that we go back in history and look at, there was one thing that was true of all of them, even in the great work of Matisse and Picasso, an ability to draw. And somewhere after World War II, post-war art, that began to break down slightly. But even in the most abstract people like de Kooning, there's still an incredible skill set and an ability to draw. And that began to slowly erode away. And one of the reasons it did is it began to not be taught in our institutions, in our academies, and in our schools. And we have reached a point now that it's almost non-existent. And I don't know about SMU, how the structure is now, but I know that when I was here, it was very much taught. We had to take life drawing ad nauseum. And we worked from still lifes. Academic drawing was taught. And let's get into one of the reasons why I think that this is so key. Not only to learn, first of all, the great British critic John Ruskin made a wonderful statement years ago. That if you taught drawing to everyone, whether it's a plumber or a roofer or a professor and the dean of the university here, when they're in school, if you taught them drawing, what it would do, it would allow them, if you taught them how to draw something just as simple as a bunch of parsley or the bark of an oak tree, and you drew it and you really studied it and you really looked at it, you would never look at life the same again, because you would see things differently. And teaching drawing to teach you to see is when it becomes paramount, because then you begin to understand how to tell the difference between a great Cézanne and a mediocre Cézanne, a great Goya and a mediocre Goya. There are very few artists in history, with the exception of maybe Vermeer, who everything they did was not great, well, and me. But the ability to see is what's key. Now, I break it down in terms of the ability to learn how to be an artist, and I'm talking to a group here that some of you may be artists. I know some of you are, and you're very good artists. But if I was, wish I was talking to a group of students. But there's three things here that are important to me. This is this thing I thought up not long ago. This is a triangle, and everything in this triangle is of equal importance. This is the eye. This is the brain. And this, I see a mess coming here if I don't take this jacket off. This is. Oh, what was the third one? A good assistant. Now, the importance of this triangle is this. If you are an artist, George, and you see something, like I saw a lot of stuff driving on Highway 75 up from Houston today, or you're in an antique store, you're in a social setting, or whatever it is in your daily life, if you see something and you want to incorporate that into your art, whatever your art happens to be, and your brain begins to understand this transfers information to the brain. Now, assuming, or vice versa, this one goes like this. Now, assuming that you've lived a full life, that you have the ability to get up in the morning and put your own pants and shoes on, then and you've lived a rich, full life and observed your surroundings and the human condition, etc., then the brain and I working together come up with this idea. This idea can be as grandiose as the pyramids in Egypt, or the Sistine ceiling, or Leonardo's great Madonna and Child. But if you don't have the skill set to execute this, the skill set is what's paramount. This is what is extremely important, is equally as important as the idea. If you don't have the three working and coordinating with each other, and you don't have the skill set to execute this, then you have an art fair. And so this is where drawing becomes so paramount, because it is through drawing and observation, especially early in your developmental years, that you begin to acquire the skill set to execute what the eye and the brain tell you. Without this, nothing will happen of any great consequence, and you get extremely mediocre and extremely boring art. And so it is my belief that drawing is paramount in this. So much so that I've spent, even today, I draw all the time. I'm obsessed with drawing. I draw in my studio. I draw on the train going to Washington. I draw sitting around when I'm watching TV, and I'm obsessed with it. And I work directly from observation. I get ideas in the middle of the night. I can't sleep. I'm putting them down. And that's where these things come from. So this was an idea that I got in the jungles of South America, in one of the most sublime places I've ever been in my life, in a place called Canaima, where Brazil, Venezuela, and Colombia meet, and there's giant falls and stuff. So I'm in there and enjoying this grandiose jungle. And of course, being the terrible pessimist that I am, I just started imagining that this beautiful rainforest was going to be, very soon would be cut down to the ground and shipped off to make matchboxes in Japan. So I had this, so much so that I even could hear the sound of chainsaws in the distance. Of course, this is imaginary. And the train coming through the jungle. So I thought, this is an idea for painting. So I drew it in a little sketchbook about this big. And so I got back to New York, and I couldn't stop thinking about this. So then it evolved very quickly into this, which is a big formal drawing of the train. And I picked a 1950s locomotive from my childhood that I used to see when I was a kid in Beaumont, and there's one like that in this park, in Central Park near downtown Beaumont. Of course, it became a rusted heap, and they cut it up and shipped it into scrap metal. But I loved those big trains and that monstrous noise they made in the steam and the whatever. And so I drew it coming through this pristine rainforest with these birds and strange birds from South America looking at it. And then that evolved into this 10-foot painting. So that's how an idea germinates, that's how it's developed, and that's hopefully how it ends up. The eye, the brain, fortunately, hopefully, I have the skill set to do that. Without the skill set, this wouldn't have happened. This is one of my, from the early 90s, like 91, I don't remember, but in the early 90s, this is one of the greatest, my favorite paintings that I did in that era. It's about the size you see it on that screen, by the way. So anyway, there's one example. Two, I'm sitting in a bar and steakhouse in New York, Midtown Manhattan, waiting on the waiter, and there's a Ben Benson's. It's no longer there, but that's a few years ago. And this idea occurred to me watching a couple just sitting there. They were older, so they weren't texting. And they were just sitting there, and I thought, well, how long is it going to be before these people speak? So finally they spoke, and then it was like, so then I got the idea that these two old crows were like going at it, and then they were, so I just wrote yes, no, four crows, whatever. That was an idea. I don't remember much more about it, but that little thing on a notepad in a steakhouse in New York evolved into this drawing called various forms of passive-aggressive behavior. So there it is. The eye seeing this weirdness, the brain telling me this is interesting. I go back, I think about it a lot, the skill set, and then I went off on this whole thing with crows and ravens and grackles. And I was sitting out in the backyard with a friend of mine's in Florida, and they have a koi pond and a goldfish pond, and some grackles were walking around it, and I thought, that's an idea. And this painting is one of the more popular paintings that it's been in 4 museum shows. And it seems to be one that people like more than others. So I'm trying to figure out why. And one of the reasons I think is because it has 3 different elements. It has, this is for you people who want to make art, it has one, it has beauty. And then 2, this is what I want in all my work, by the way, but I can't get it very often. It has danger. And 3, it has mystery. Now, the beauty, hopefully, is just the way it's painted and the fact that it's got these pretty lilies and all that kind of stuff. And the danger is these things are threatening each other, but they're also, that bird is about to get that thing, etc. These things don't know what the hell's going on. And so, and it's got mystery. Like, what's going on here? First of all, that doesn't happen in nature. I just made it up. But there's something mysterious about it. What is that? I told you it was somebody's reflecting pond, but is it like a cauldron somewhere that's an old well? Is it whatever? There's mystery. So if you can incorporate those 3, again, this is the brain, and this is the eye seeing the pond. This is the brain making some assessment of what the eye saw, and this is the skill set to pull it off. more beauty, more danger, and more mystery. This one is called The Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and I'm privileged to have it in the show in the Meadows here. And I was doing a big painting of watermelons, and I love, that's my favorite fruit in the world, but I was breaking these big chunks of watermelon up in my backyard and getting these birds to come eat it and so forth. And so I got this idea to put these grackles. I put it on my bird feeder. They love watermelon, blue jays, grackles, whatever. So then I got to do this drawing of this painting of these birds kind of fighting each other over this watermelon. There's plenty for everybody, but they're fighting with each other because that's what they do. And there's this tension set up in the dynamic of the triangle and the tension set up between each one of them looking at each other. None of them are actually eating. They're just arguing so much they forget to eat. Just shut up, eat. Plenty. And this is just an extension of it, also in the Meadows. This is called a wonderful poetic title called Sweet and Juicy. And this, another example of a sketch that came to my mind about putting all those things in this entire, like do it big, think big, So I got this idea based on an old painting of mine called Chocolate Boogie, and my original idea was to put vultures and crows in it. And so I did the little sketch somewhere far away from my studio, and that ended up being that. Which is a very strange picture if you see it in real life, because the husband that owns the painting saw it and thought it was the prettiest thing he'd ever seen. Loved it. Oh my God, John, I've never seen you do a painting so pretty. So it's beautiful. And I got to get it. So it's wanted his wife to come see it. She came to look at it and she said, it's the bloodiest, ugliest thing she ever saw. It was violent. She didn't want anything like that in her house. So I knew I'd done something really good. Another thing, same idea that turned into that. Ashley's supposed to let me know how far I've got. I promised I'd be out of here in 45 minutes. I'm all right? It's going to be the fastest lecture I've ever done. I did a lecture here about 8 or 9 years ago. If some of you may have been at it, you're probably still shaken by it. It was in the auditorium at the MAC, and they put a big comfortable chair there, and I was about to do this show at the Smithsonian. They were writing the book. And I told the chief curator that I would do this lecture. I was doing this lecture. I said, I'm going to sit there and talk about my life from birth to now. And you don't have to interview me. You just transcribe that tape and you'll know everything you need to know for the book. And I started talking, and oh my God, 2 hours later. But not a single person left that room. And I went on and on and so finally, I've done it. Now, my entire life in 2.5 hours, and the damn recorder didn't work. It's a true story. So, anyway, now I'm on a time clock. That's another one from it. I have a beautiful pond in my yard that I spend thousands of dollars in New York to try to make like eastern Texas, Louisiana border. And it does from July to June, July, August, September, and then it becomes Alaska. Same idea. I was on a pier. Actually, Ashley was with me. I was giving a talk at this museum, of all places, the University Museum in Oxford, Mississippi. And you think you have a Confederate flag controversy here. Anyway, I did the talk, and then I went down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast to some little museum there where I did something, and there was a dock there nearby, and I went out and she was taking some photographs, and God, memory lane, man, this is what I remember from Beaumont as a child. I love the Pelicans, I love the beach, I love Galveston. 10 hurricanes later, it's not there anymore, but I love this stuff. So I did a little sketch, and I thought, I've got to do this. I've got to go back. Several years went by, but I had the little drawing, and that became this. Very new. It's also in the show upstairs, and it's called Memory Lane. Now this again, this picture is has nothing to do with this triangle, but this picture, and I was looking at who was that painting the other day we saw that I said it was based on the square and who was that person? It was the Rubens. There's a show of Rubens called Spectacular Rubens in Houston at the Museum of Fine Arts. It's actually dud Rubens, but because it's tapestries. I thought it was going to be this big Rubens show, but there's a couple of little paintings. And the composition of the Rubens is based on, and I use this a lot, stealing it from the old masters, but it's based on a light that comes through, a composition that's based on this old thing. I use that, but I also use, and not so much this one, I'll show you some more. I like to use my compositions based on a triangle where you have stuff, you have a central point, and then you build the composition around the triangle, and then you start to lay, whatever. And I'll show you later, but this again goes back to the idea, how do you do this? How do you execute it? How do you get the skill set? You get the skill set through practice. It's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice. And we don't seem to understand as a culture anymore that if art is a taught thing. Well, some are, about every 100 years. It's like Michael Jordan comes along once every 100 years. George Tobolowsky comes along about every 100 years. And me. And James Searles, and David Bates, Mary Vernon. We all come along every 100 years. But seriously, art is it's taught. It's like saxophone. Arnett Coleman, John Coltrane, they weren't born playing. Miles Davis wasn't born playing like he played to the middle and end of his life. He learned that. He had great skill set. Now, I gave a lecture once. This is astounding. I'm going to give you, I don't teach anymore, but I'm going to give you a lecture on how to draw. This is a skill set. And I would like to challenge the students that, if I ever met one on this campus, I'd like to, this is like a Twilight Zone movie. I've been here for months and I haven't met a student yet. But anyway, I guess I'm too old. If I was 25 and did what I did, they would be outside in the back of trucks with beer and stuff waiting for me to come out. I gave a lecture once at Louisiana State University. And I realized, this was a graduate student, I realized that what I was saying, they had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. And I said, did any of you here ever take a drawing class? Well, do you know anything about, so I said, let me give you a drawing lesson in under 1 minute, 45 seconds. I said, let's start with this. Holy shit. I'm completely out of control. Oh, good God. Fix it, Ashley. Don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to this. So I said, all right, I'm going to give you a drawing lesson. Let's start with that. That is a circle. But let's say it's not a circle. Let's put a dot right there and a shadow here, and then a shadow there. Now it's an orange. And so now we've learned something. We can use a light source. We got a shadow here and a darker shadow there. So now the orange is three-dimensional. Now let's do something else real quick. Let's put another orange there, slightly smaller. Do the same thing. Another shadow. Now you've got perspective. Let's put another orange right here and do the same thing. Now you've really got perspective. And also you got a composition. 40 seconds. Nobody ever told us that. And I said, how'd you get through 4 years of school and nobody ever told you that? Much less trying to understand that. You know? So why is that important? I'll tell you why it's important to me. It's just, if you understand sublime beauty and you understand art, And you understand to not be like lemmings. I was at the Dallas airport. No, it was Hobby. We were at the airport coming here the other day, and I was desperate for coffee. And there was a Dunkin' Donuts, and it was about as many people as in this auditorium lined up to eat this Dunkin' Donuts. And there were 3 other coffee places around it, and not a person in line. Because we're taught to believe that something is, it's what we're just taught to believe. Dunkin' Donuts is the best coffee there. Well, it's preposterous. It's brand identification. We're taught to believe in this insane way that Andy Warhol is the greatest artist of the 20th century. In the same way we're taught to believe that Dunkin' Donuts is the greatest coffee. It's just image advertising. It's just the idea that we're creating false prophets in the art world that have not. So if you understand how to draw and how to see and how to understand, then you understand what real beauty is. Then you understand how to look at art. Then you go to the Dallas Museum and you go upstairs and you look at the work of Otis Dozier and Jerry Bywaters, who are of no consequence in the big picture of art history, but yet you can put their work next to the greatest masters. And if you understand what really great art is, then you understand that that art is actually in its own way as great as a Raphael. But we can't accept that because we haven't been told that they're important. We haven't been told to line up like at the Dunkin' Donuts. And that's a sad thing. So how do you understand how to appreciate that art? How do you understand it to know that it has a message, it has a meaning, it has beauty, it has a composition, it has color, it has an extraordinary sense of complexity and its skill set, and it's got a message, and it's got mystery, and it's got danger or beauty. It has sadness, it has passion. All great art tends to go in those directions. But you can only understand and appreciate it if you know anything. Otherwise, you're just lining up at the Dunkin' Donuts, thinking that you got a great cup of coffee. You know, Ashley and I ate 12 donut holes, by the way, between Huntsville and here. So I have no right to talk about anybody doing anything. Where's my clicker? So, enough of that. Where am I? I'm going to get us out of here. All right, this is just because I'm about to embark on some imagery of people. I want to show you a couple of things, though, that I consider. Now, I've really worked hard in terms of all that stuff on the composition of this picture and the organization of this picture and trying to create some kind of complex sense of not only composition, color, etc., but a narrative of maybe something is going on there, and there's something mysterious going on. And I try very hard in my landscapes to do that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I had an idea once in my bedroom, of all places. I was laying there, and the drawer was open, and outside is my bird feeder, and I thought, I'm doing this. I did these drawings of these ravens on the flags, and so I thought, what about a raven kind of pulling a flag? I thought that's kind of a cool idea. Then I thought about a raven pulling a flag out of the drawer. I thought, now you're getting too tricky. So anyway, that was the drawing, and that's like a where in there? Oh, the button on the other side. Cool. Okay, that is like let me use this little thing. Some of you may have heard this story, but I'm going to tell you because the statute of limitations has run out and I can't be arrested. I gave a talk once in Washington back in the 80s, and I went to the museum there where I spoke. The curator and somebody took me to this fancy restaurant at the Willard Hotel. It's a kind of big hotel by the White House. And sitting across the restaurant from here to that table was none other than Henry Kissinger, the butcher of Cambodia. And I still had the clicker in my pocket from the lecture. I thought, and I put that dot right here. And he didn't know, but the guy sitting across the table went like, put the thing back in my pocket. Went back to cutting my steak. There you have it. This idea came, actually, oh shit. I can draw. All right. This idea is a graveyard across from where I live in Amagansett. And these, they have these beautiful little flags on a lot of the graves. All the veterans have flags on their graves. And I drive by it all the time, and I'm always moved by it. It's a very powerful image. And so I had an idea once of just putting these different kind of things on top of the flags. And I started to use these flags in my landscapes, and I still do a lot. But I began to use images from the flag. What's this one called? Huh? Oh, Raven Maniac. Let me explain that. A Raven Maniac. I get offended. Let's see, I'm getting in thin ice here. Like the great Coach Herm Edwards said, don't hit send. You know, if you write it down and you got this thought and it's like, yeah, don't send it. Just that's all right. I'll do a modified version of it. I'm offended by the idea that certain right-wing crazies think that they own the flag and the image of the flag. The flag is owned by all Americans, rich and poor, impoverished, hardworking Americans that get up every day and go to work, of various races and creeds and color and levels of wealth and importance. The flag is all of ours. And so for the flag to be used by certain groups to pretend or assume or preach that that is their flag, and that anybody that doesn't adhere to their ideology is not a patriot or not an American is a preposterous notion. I mean, the flag has been used as a symbol throughout its entire existence by the Ku Klux Klan. They hide behind the flag, they hide behind the cross, and the hypocrisy and the grotesqueness of that has always bothered me, even from my childhood, growing up in the Deep South and East Texas. And so I began to use the flag in many ways, but this one is Raven Maniac. This is kind of the Raven from Edgar Allan Poe, which is about the nevermore, blah, blah, blah. It's too good. I'd run over my time limit, but anyway, it's called Raven Maniac. This is a self-portrait, one of the only self-portraits, real self-portraits I've ever done, called Angry Man with Broken Nimbus. This is the flag, exactly what I was talking about. This is this angry man who's clutching the flag, and something is wrong and something is making him crazy. And you don't know what he's looking at, but he's frustrated. And I think he speaks for a lot of us. And the broken nimbus means that the same thing as with the flag is that the idea that religious nuts seem to think that the only way that they own the flag, and that's a broken idea. So that's the reason one of the reasons the nimbus is broken. I literally saw a billboard driving. It's on my cell phone. If anybody want to look at my cell phone, coming up today, there's a giant billboard as big as this wall almost. It says, what does it say? Cowboy, no, what? Cowboy something. It's great. I wanted to use it. I will use it somehow. You're young. You're supposed to know how to do that real fast. Branded for Christ. It's got these branding irons and barbed wire, and then it says Cowboy Ranch. Cowboy Church. And I thought, now wait a minute, are they insinuating that they're going to brand us? That's way the hell out there, right? So anyway, that's just called Pinhead. And I'll let it speak for itself. Actually, I did a portrait of this congressman from Florida named Condit, who is an extreme right-wing congressman from Palm Beach district, and he was arrested about 5 years ago. His computer was just bulging with child pornography. So I guess he had to take his flag lapel pin off. What's that called? I don't know. And that's just a picture I did past summer, a big picture, like about the size you see it, that I just wanted to do this big flag, you know, so I did it. And it's one of the most dramatic and beautiful paintings I think I've ever done in my career. And I want to end the flag series by just showing you that, because that, and more than anything, symbolizes my feeling of love and deep respect for my nation and my flag. This is a beginning of a large painting, and here it's important because the drawing becomes important. If I have a painting that is like this, and I begin to work out an idea, and here's a horse, and here's a horse, and so forth, and then I begin to work with the drawing, and all of a sudden I don't like this, so I move this horse to here, and I go there. Then I got a horse coming in from here, and that figures here, and so forth, and I get all this worked out, this size, and then I go up to that size. Then I sit there and I stare, and I say, uh-oh, this is not working, so I have to move that over to there. And this is all thought out and moved and shifted and so forth. So that's the process, and that's, again, goes back to the skill set. You can't do that without having the ability to make that work. And that comes from standing in Roger Winter's drawing class, working from some model for hours on end, or working in the context of looking and studying old masters and understanding their compositions and understanding the techniques and various changes that happen throughout the history of art, and studying the passion of Goya, or the color of Matisse, or the complexity of Braque and Picasso and Cézanne's Cubist. You know, it all works together. It's an education, and we're in the middle of a center of education, and that's a very good thing, because it's nice that we're still teaching art and talking about art, and you love art, and this museum's here, and the Dallas Museum's here. Anyway, that's so. If you look at this one, there's the where did he go? Oh, anyway, there's one of them in there, that a couple of them, they're not there anymore. I took them out. And that's the finished piece. And that's upstairs. Now, we have our last drawing to paintings. And this is an idea that I got called Ship of Fools. Now, the Ship of Fools is not in this. I'm using this Ship of Fools. This is an idea I had out in fishing one day, and thinking about putting these kind of, and I love the idea of the Ship of Fools. They're actually, the British did have what was really called Ship of Fools in the early 1800s, and they would round up all the people that they thought were crazy. Maybe it's just somebody that, you know, didn't agree with them. If they'd put them on these boats and put them out, and that's how they dealt with their mentally ill. State of Louisiana under Bobby Jindal just decided how to do it. They just closed all the mental hospitals in the state of Louisiana. So I guess they just assumed there are no mentally ill people. And so we, that drawing and a series of those little drawings became this, which is this and the one that's upstairs in the Meadows are two of my favorite paintings of figurative things. And it's just a collection of various sorts of people who you can put whoever you want behind the mask. I get asked all the time, well, why don't you paint this person or that person? Why don't you put this? And I don't do that. I think that if I want my paintings to be timeless. So if you put them in the context of a specific person, then what you've done is you create a painting that's of interest at that particular time, but all those personalities change in a few years they're gone, and a new group come in. So if you leave the identities unknown, it can be timeless. That painting could be about the politics of the life and the complexity of personalities that run Mexico City or Madrid or Moscow or Houston or Dallas or wherever. It doesn't, hopefully it's got a timeless feel to it, and it's universal. And I believe that what happens is, if you've had a long career like me, and I'm blessed that I've had such a long career, and you have the opportunity to have seen as much as I have and experienced as much as I have, it gives you a broad perspective. And I've watched and observed what I believe is the deterioration in terms of my aesthetic. Now, you could have someone else make the argument, and could do it with great skill in their argument, that, wait a minute, this is also as valid as what you're saying. I'm not saying that this is the only way to look at and approach art. This is the way I do it. And that's what I'm trying to hopefully make you understand in the beginning, is that this is just one artist's view. And so given that, I'm not trying to eliminate the idea of working with computers, working with plastics, working with this. But I do believe that in terms of the things you learn from drawing and from observation and from looking at your great history, which we have, and that's why you have the Meadows Museum, and you have great museums, and we have access to this stuff online. Now, you can go to the Prado website, literally, and go to Hieronymus Bosch, Garden of Earthly Delights, and go in and look at the fingernails on the paintings. I mean, that's what we have access to now. So there's no reason not to love. I get at night, I'll pick an artist that I don't know anything about. I'll just find an artist like the guy, Grant Wood was one a few months ago. I'm thinking about Grant Wood's woman with by the way, Jerry Bywater, the great Jerry Bywater, he loved that thing. He used to talk about it. But he hated the fact that it became a Kellogg's cornflakes box. It drove him crazy. But I was thinking about that painting in terms of my own work. And I was trying to put in some old witch with a pitchfork. And I thought, well, you know, I don't really know Grant Wood's work. I know that, and I've seen a couple. I have no idea about Grant Wood. So I go on, I do this, German expressionist. I don't know anything about that. So I go pick a German expressionist. Then all of a sudden now I've seen 100 images. So I went to Grant Wood, and I was astounded by the breadth of his work. He's extraordinary landscapes. And there's one painting in particular he did early on that's very much like Van Gogh's portrait of the worker's shoes, all gnarly shoes with the, and so you have access to that. And you have access to such a vast array of information and stuff. But we have to understand that to really appreciate it, it's an acquired work in progress, that you have to not just assume that Dunkin' Donuts is the greatest cup of coffee, but really taste a lot of coffees and live a full life and be questioning of things, and don't accept what is forced upon you as what is great, but make your own decision, and really you'll understand that there's a whole lot of marvelous things there that don't get attention and don't get access, and that are just as powerful and just as good as the great masters that you know about. And by training your eye and brain to work and having some skill set, now I'm not asking you to draw, but where you understand the complexity of what it took to make it, then you will appreciate art and everything you see in life much, much more. So I sincerely appreciate your patience, and I did get in under an hour. And I thank you, and I'm so proud. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so proud to be back here on this campus where I was taught this skill set. If any questions we'll ask, I'll be happy to answer them. Yes?
I noticed on some of your pieces, it looks like you dinged or damaged the. How do you make the decision?
Well, I'd sand them, I'd mess with them. The drawing of the oysters, the oyster drawing, I I had it on the floor, and I literally walked on the paper. I'd take tea and coffee, and I put stuff, then I sand it. Sometimes I take ashes out. I've got a big old potbelly stove in my studio, and I don't do the drawings in the city in New York because the charcoal. So a lot of times I take them outside and I'm against them on the wall of my barn, so I can just put that charcoal everywhere. But I make it's what one of my friends so instant old master look. So, you know, and it is. I mean, I went when I was trying to teach myself how to draw again. When I turned 50, I was giving a lecture at the Rhode Island School of Design. I was talking to these kids about your future's ahead of you. Now you're going to graduate in a month, and this is what, you know. Time goes by so fast, and I'm 50 now. I'm no longer at the middle of my life because I'm not probably going to live to be 100. I've reassessed that, but I've been making art for half of my life, and it goes by so quick. So I'm on the train coming back, and I was thinking on the train, what was that about? You know, you're halfway through your life. I mean, you're halfway through your career, and I thought maybe you should relook at what you're doing and I thought, well, how can I change? What can I do? And I thought, well, the only thing I can do that I know I can do is make myself better as a draftsman. So I decided, and I went to the Met, and I went down in the drawing library, and you can pull out drawers and just with white gloves and whole Rembrandts, and you can look at Delacroix sketchbooks, and you can look at Winslow Homer's watercolors, and whoever you want to look at. So I did that, and then I started going and looking at all these Christie's and Sotheby's old master catalogs, and then I started looking at old master drawings, and I got this books on Leonardo and Michelangelo, and I just tried to figure out what it was that was made great drawing great, and I understood in looking at it that there's just some kind of magic that happens with the surface and the way the line is used. So I decided to just try to teach myself, looking at these great masters, how to be a better draftsman. So the first thing I did is I went to the seafood market and bought some fish, and then I went and got this, and I went and got that. And I literally worked directly from observation. So if the bluefish was that big, then I got a piece of paper and I drew it just, you know. And I worked at that for like months, and then I started kind of liking it. And then I thought, I like doing this. So I kept drawing and kept drawing. And I taught myself at this age of 50 to be a better draftsman. So anyway, that in doing all that, I started learning that they're paper probably because of age. But if you look at the great Michelangelo, there's a wonderful example that somebody wrote about once, that if you look at Michelangelo's drawings of his studio assistants and people that he had in his studio, there's a certain level of masterful skill and beauty. And then if you look at his drawings of angels and saints or whatever that he's never seen, that he just made up, there's a marked difference in the two. Point being that working from observation is such a great teacher. Yes. Yes, Miss Mary Vernon. What?
It's so much fun to listen to you, as always.
Oh, thank you.
I wonder if you have been to...
No, are they there now?
They've been...
No, I have not seen them.
With all their silver moldings.
But I did see a beautiful Thomas Hart Benton at the Dallas Museum the other day. And I have to tell you that this is important. I looked at that Thomas Hart Benton. It's on the wall with the Otis Doziers and all that. And I thought, this is what kind of triggered me to talk about the idea that you put those people in the context of the great masters. Because why aren't they great masters? At their very best, if you really want to get into some argument and take all the politics out of just look at the raw image, you could certainly make the case that they're right there. I mean, the best of them. And yet, if you go to it used to all be obvious in the way they were all installed. If you go to the Met and you see the European painters, there's like one here, one here, one here, one here, and the walls were green velvet like that, and they all had these beautiful lights. And you go on the American, and there were 12 high, and there wasn't very much light in there, and it's like, there's just a disrespect that's changing. But I saw that Thomas Hart Benton, and I thought, man, that's a really amazing painting. He was a great American master, but he was like Napoleon being sent to Elba. He was just exiled to the dustbin because he wasn't part of the fashion of the 1950s New York.
The reason I brought this up is that I think you will enjoy the material out of which that new school mural is made in enormous.
Mm. Well, that would be a new direction to go. Something I've never painted with tempera before. I've never really painted with gouache. I never could figure out quite how to use it.
Just looking at the mural, you'll know.
I'm going to go see it. Another question? Yes, ma'am. Tempera? No, I've never used tempera. Oh. Well, I would never say an unkind word about any artist, but I have great respect for the Wyeths. There's an exhibition, oddly enough. I was just in Palm Beach doing this project 3 weeks ago, and there's the Farnsworth Museum in Maine is being rebuilt or something, so that their collection is not up, and they sent a big portion of it to the Four Arts Society in Palm Beach, and I went by there, and they have 4 N.C. Wyeths, 3 or 4 Andrew Wyeths, and 3 or 4 Jamie Wyeths in the collection. And what a powerful bunch of pictures that was. My favorite is N.C. Wyeth, but I like all of them very much. I got to meet Andy Wyeth. If you look in my book, on the picture of my desk, this 2-page spread on the far, if you look at this one picture, there's a ghost image kind of thing. It's Searles and Rizzi and I in New Orleans in 1976. The other end of the desk, there's a more recent, well, 10 years ago, picture of this old artist and me, and nobody in the world would recognize, but it's Andrew Wyeth. I got the privilege of meeting him and spending time with him up in Maine. He's kind of a hero of mine. Yes, yes, yes. Yes?
I wondered if...
Are you the one student here?
Trying to be. I wondered if you found over time that you found a palette that you anchored to more than others.
What?
Like over the course of your career, I wondered if you had gravitated to a palette of sorts that was an anchor over time more than others.
Yeah, I'm totally boring with that. I've tried to understand and learn how to use color, but I'm so seeped in earth tones and earth color, and every time I try to get out there on that edge of color, I've always admired the paintings of David Bates because he just has no fear. He just puts that paint. He applies it with great thickness, but the colors are just fascinating to me. I just get all lost when I try that, but I still keep trying to do it. But about as close as I get is in some of these figurative, like the carousel. I got pushed out a little bit color-wise, but generally I stay in a very narrow range of earthy browns to greens and all. And my wife comes through my studio all the time and continues walking. She never looks. She just walks by and says, "Still using that green." Cat food can. A lot of green in that showing down. Yes, somebody.
Thank you.
Somebody else had a question. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed there's a sort of gritty.
Yes.
I wondered if you...
No, that's just pure, that's just paint. But I do, as I said earlier, I sand down sometime, then I put it back on over it and then layer and stuff. I've never been what would be called facile. I've never had that ability to, I could do your portrait and it would look like you, but it would take me 2 weeks. And I'd start over and I'd have to redo you, and then I'd start over and I'd scrape it down. There are artists that can paint you in an hour and look exactly like you. But I've never had that skill set. I have to struggle. It always has been a struggle for me to that. So I work on the surface a lot. And I try to create, I hate to continue to use the word, but I try to create some kind of sense of magic. I love paint, and I like the way it feels and so forth, but it's a struggle for me to make those surfaces. And so that's why and I hope that helps, because I nothing worse than slick. All right. Yes, Mr. Claude Albrin. I photographed them in various stages, yes. Wait. Oh, we didn't finish. I'm glad you reminded me of it. Yes, oh, can you turn the lights out? I'll go through them real quick. Who's got the lights? Oh my goodness. Yes, yes, I do that, Claude, and I sometimes when I look at the photographs, I go, this is not working, and I completely redo it. But I stopped too quick. But that's all right, I needed to. Became that, which became that. Now, that is my version of George Washington crossing the Delaware. That's what's called a primitive motorboat. But that's based on a triangle, but I don't want to get bogged down with these. But that, Claude, that thing has gone through so many revisions. For example, if you look at that guy and then look at the bull, those two, now they're still there. Still there. Hello, now they're gone. And the pig man up there became the pig man there, and the bull horns left. Anyway, that's the last picture. So thank you all very, very much.